Looking to spruce up a boring old game of Mobile Suit Skirmish? Look no further! Let's discuss environment and terrain. If your group is getting to the intermediate to advanced level, you should start looking to mess with these rules in order to test your strategic mindset. I talked a little while ago about how space combat isn't influenced by environment. I made that distinction because you can have these rulings inside of colonies if you split the map up. Speaking of which, these rulings should take place before any units are placed, and if you're going to be generous, these rules should be decided well before anyone even shows up to play the game. When the game starts, you can roll a dice to randomly determine a weather effect for that game. You should try to pick one that fits with the terrain you have set up. If you want, you can also roll a die to determine the amount of terrain that your map will have. Section the map into corners and roll a d6 subtracting 3 to decide how many large pieces of terrain the map will have. Roll another d6 and subtract 1 for medium terrain, and roll a regular d6 to determine the small terrain. First up, we'll cover the Earth and Colony environmental effects, and also Mars if you're a cool kid. These effects are supposed to persist for like the entire match, but if you want, you can have them turn on and off at intervals if you want. 1 to 2 is dense Minovsky particles. This is a cluster of Gundam's signature isotopic particles. If you've watched the show, you know that Minovsky particles ruin radar and jam transmissions while they're in high clusters. This is represented in-game by having ambushes fail on a roll of 1 to 3, succeed within 12 inches of the intended spot on a 4 to 5, and go off without a hitch when you roll a 6. While you're here, the abilities Scout and Panoramic Cockpit don't work. You also can't make any volley shots due to targeting computers being jammed. 3 to 4 is bad weather. This is a really interesting one. So when a player makes a shooting action, up to 3 times per match, they can choose to remove a single one of their attack dice and store it in sort of a reserve pool. You keep this result face up in front of you for all players to see and can store a maximum of 3 dice. Anytime you would make an attack, you can substitute a die in your unit's current attack pool for one of the ones you stored in reserve. It doesn't say you need to swap it out for a shooting action, so I'll assume that you don't have to. 5 to 6 is no weather at all, just a clear day. So space has its own special effects. These are kinda rough, so watch out. 1 to 2 is debris showers. Split the map in half. It says during each turn roll a d6. On a 1 to 2, everyone in the first half of the map takes 1 damage. On a 3 to 4, everyone in the second half takes 1 damage. On a 5 to 6, nothing happens. It says each turn, but I think they meant like at the top of each round. It's funny because someone in the Discord played this mode with the Requiem from the end of Gundam Seed, and just had one side of the map get wiped out every other turn. 3 to 4 is atmospheric interface. You choose one edge of the battlefield. Nobody can deploy within 18 inches of that area. Anyone who does enter this area rolls a d6. On a 1 to 2, they fall into the Earth's gravity and are destroyed. On a 3 to 4, they take 3 damage and have to use a free movement action to move out of that area. On a 5 to 6, the unit takes no damage but still has to move out of the area as a free action. Rolling a 5 to 6 is an empty vacuum. This sounds bad, but just like every other high roll, it means that nothing happens. So those are the 2 tables for environment effects. But we actually have 2 more that determine the playing field. Let's start with terrain type. A 1 is military terrain. So this includes ruins of buildings, dangerous terrain like minefields, bunkers, industry factories, and sandbagged emplacements. You know, a war zone. 2 to 3 is wilderness. Rivers, forest, swamps, snowfields, mountainsides, you know, nature. A 4 is urban. This is buildings, train yards, parks, roadways, a bridge or two, you know, an unruined cityscape. A 5 or a 6 is an open plains area. This includes fields and farms that are like out in the middle of nowhere. So the last table is just the time of day. This only applies when you're playing on a planet and actually only impacts a unit's line of sight. This can actually play against long-range strategies. I tried to see how some keep-away strategies played against a more in-your-face team at these times, and it really favors those close-range tactics. One is Dawn. Vision range is reduced to 24 inches for robots and 10 inches for everything else. This only lasts for the first 4 rounds to symbolize the sun rising in the morning. After that, everything becomes completely normal. Try to use these first 4 turns to close the gap and get your close combat attackers in fighting distance. Or wait until the sun is about to come up and do like a really cool one-on-one showdown. 2 to 3 is daytime. Nothing happens, line of sight is normal. 4 to 5 is dusk. As the reverse of dawn, sight is normal for the first 4 turns, and for every turn after that, sight is reduced for robots to 32 inches and 18 inches for everyone else. A 6 is nighttime. Sight is reduced to 24 inches for robots and 10 inches for everyone else. Take advantage of this, it's great for ambushes and siege tactics. I talked in the last video about how if infantry was inside of a building while it was destroyed, they would take damage. This set of rules allows units to damage buildings with shooting actions. They can't be meleeed and you can't critical hit them. Why only shooting actions? I don't know, shut up. When a unit destroys a piece of terrain, all units on or inside that terrain are immediately moved 4 inches from the closest edge of that terrain. Once everyone has been moved away from the terrain, it is removed from the table, and everyone who had to leave takes a certain amount of damage based on the terrain type. 2 big things about this. This entire action happens all at once, so there isn't any time between these things happening until it's all over. You move and take damage all at the same time. Second, this damage can't be blocked or avoided in any manner, it just kinda gets you. Before you ask, this really just applies to like buildings and other things that can actually be reasonably destroyed or removed. So you can't normally destroy rivers and mountains and junk. The book says players should decide what is and isn't able to be destroyed during the game. Terrain types are as follows: forest and small natural cover, housing and small buildings, stores and medium-sized buildings, military buildings and large-sized buildings, towers and tall, thin structures, bridges, elevated roads, and other support structures, explosive terrain, ammo depots, reactors, other things that you shouldn't fight near. I'm not going to go over the armor values, integrity, and damage because I think that your group should maybe finagle some of these a bit and decide what you do and don't want to be tough and how much damage you want it to do, because I don't think this is a very one-size-fits-all list. There's also no exact sizing on these things, so let your group decide what is what size beforehand. I know this has been a lot, but I want to cover some extra rulings before we go. So you can actually use micro-scale units if you want. Really, these are like Warhammer-sized units that you might have from the upcoming Gundam Assemble game included with the card game. These are usually like 1/300 to 1/400 scale, and sometimes come in like capsule machines and those little blind pull boxes you get at cons or hobby stores. So if everyone agrees to use these little micro figures, you don't actually change that much about the game. Close combat only occurs when bases are touching. You cut the range of any like splash attacks like rockets or spray guns and abilities, I guess. You round down, of course. That's kinda it. You just play the game with micro figures. I imagine this version will become really popular once Assemble comes out if this game isn't like replaced by Assemble entirely. The other bonus ruling is Overkill. Overkill is a dynamic ruling that makes your units explode when they get destroyed by excess damage. When the unit is destroyed by excess damage, you roll a d6. If the number rolled is less than the amount of excess damage, then the unit explodes. Just a note that infantry does not explode because they are people, and that's a completely different genre. No, wait, it isn't. When a unit explodes, all other units within 6 inches of it roll defense against a single hit, and if they don't block it, then they take damage equal to the integrity the unit had when the game started. After it explodes, that unit is removed from the table and the pilot immediately gets a 1 on the destruction table. You should also know that this counts total damage, not individual pieces of damage. So if you shoot a unit with 3 integrity for 3 damage twice, it gets overkilled for 3 damage, and explodes on a roll of a 1 or a 2. So that's all for now. We're not done with rulings yet, but the next video will be digging into campaign rulings. I haven't played a campaign yet because my group is still struggling with like playing casual matches, I'll figure this one out and see you next time.